The last time we saw Paul Crewe, he was playing football for Florida State University, where in his freshman season he purposely threw the Orange Bowl just so he could cash in a bet for a mob boss. But in his sophomore season, Paul played so well that he had led Florida State to a national championship victory, and he was the main reason why. It got to the point where everybody knew that Paul was a top quarterback, and he figured since he had already won a national championship, by the end of his junior season, maybe it was time for him to enter his name into the NFL draft. So in Indianapolis at the scouting combine, Paul showed up locked in and ready to go. And Paul had done pretty well. He did a great job with his drills and impressed a lot of the scouts. Unfortunately, because of some rumors though, Paul was projected to be a second-round pick. And at the NFL draft, coach Dennis Allen of the New Orleans Saints let Paul know that they will be selecting him with the 41st pick in the draft. So Paul Crewe got ready to be a New Orleans Saint. But during his time in New Orleans, there was always questions about whether or not his heart was fully in the game of football. But it wasn't like Paul was a bad quarterback. Matter of fact, he was actually a great one. He won a lot of games with the Saints, oftentimes leading them to a victory in the last moments of the game. But it was his time as a Pittsburgh Steeler where he would really reach the height of his career. Because after reaching the Super Bowl against the Rams, he'd come up with a huge throw in the biggest moment of his career, scoring a touchdown with almost no time left, leading the Pittsburgh Steelers to their 7th Super Bowl championship. But you might be surprised to find out that this actually was the beginning of the end of Paul Crewe's career, because the following season in the AFC divisional round, Paul Crewe had been caught up in a bad way with some bad people, and they wanted him to throw the game against the Jacksonville Jaguars. And unluckily for Paul, he was making it a little too obvious that he wasn't trying to win the game. And it got even worse in the second half when he went out there and was making throws that he would never make usually, eventually leading to a 23-15 loss to the Jaguars. And unfortunately for Paul, people had caught on to the schemes that he was a part of, and that would result in him not only getting released from the Steelers, but receiving a lifetime ban from the NFL. On top of that, he had to go to court for the entire thing and was sentenced to 10 years of probation. And for a while, it seemed like Paul had appreciated his freedom. He was doing pretty well up until one night where he decided to go on a drunken high-speed chase, ending it with a huge pile-up crash, but at least he didn't spill his beer.
Good news, boys, I didn't spill my beer.
But although Paul Crewe knew that he was heading to prison, he had no clue that somebody had a plan for him when he got there. And Paul had learned quickly that these prison guards were not very nice. But even though he was making some friends like his buddy Caretaker, he would find out from the prison warden that his main job is to assemble a football team out of all the inmates. He figured if Georgia could have criminals playing football, then why couldn't he?
Football, tree, what the hell's a tryout?
Tryout, you have a meatball.
And y'all wouldn't believe that this team didn't even know how to play football when they first came out to practice. Paul definitely couldn't believe it. But as rough as a start that this was, Paul did recruit some pretty solid players so far. First, he went out there and got a defensive tackle, Big Switowski. Then he picked up a right end, Big Tony. Then he picked up a 7-foot fullback, Big Turley. And yeah, there's a lot of big guys so far, but he also got a crazy guy when he picked up this strong safety, Crazy Torres. He also got himself a linebacker, Joey Battle. And oh yeah, we can't forget about Brucey.
Hey, Crew, why does he get to be the kicker? I was all state, man.
Let's see what you got.
That's why, you dumbass.
But eventually Paul would realize that he has no offense. And his friend Caretaker said it's because he got no brothers on the team.
Switowski, that's one brother. That's a lonely nigga. This ain't hockey.
So Paul went out there and actually recruited a familiar face, Earl Megan, the Heisman-winning running back from Baylor, who was also one of the fastest people on the planet. But it wasn't just him, because Paul was able to recruit a bunch of other top-tier players to fill out the rest of this roster, and everybody seemed to be pretty happy about it. Well, except Brucey.
Oh, I'll never get to play.
And now for 2 additions to this offense, they got a top-tier wide receiver, Deacon Moss, who will be mossing some cornerbacks. And they got a tight end, Cheeseburger Eddie. Now this guy can block, catch, and get you a quarter pounder. So now Paul Crewe was ready to lead this group of sick and degenerate convicts, and they were actually going to be coached by a former Heisman winner, Nate Scarborough, who decided that he also wanted to play. But after Caretaker had gotten this team some new gear, the Mean Machine were now ready to take on the Allenville Guards. We start this game off with the Guards quarterback, Captain Knauer. delivering a strike down the left side of the field to a wide open receiver. A player who was able to bring his team all the way down the field and eventually across the goal line for a touchdown. And as far as the Mean Machine's offense, they didn't start off too hot either, with Paul Crewe getting wrecked on third down, causing a change of possessions that ultimately resulted in the guards moving their way right downfield, picking up some huge yards on this run and bringing their team down to the 10-yard line, where it'd only be a play later that one of the running backs finessed their way into the end zone for a touchdown, and he was feeling himself to say the least.
That's how a white man runs a football.
But now that they were down by 14, the Mean Machine was starting to get things going. Earl Meggett went out there and said, "Hey, you picked up a pretty nice first down." He actually led his team all the way down the field before saying, "Excuse me," and then deciding to dive into the end zone for a touchdown, coming up with the first points for the Mean Machine and showing that they got some real ballers on the team. Now on defense, they went out there and were getting some pretty good stops. Big Tony was doing a great job stuffing the run from the edge. But then they also had a linebacker drop back and said, "Wang," picking off a pass that puts the Mean Machine offense in plus territory already. And this turned into an excellent opportunity for Paul Crewe to find a wide receiver wide open and deliver a strike for a touchdown, tying it up at 14. And all of a sudden, we have a game. Even with the guards coming up with the field goal before the 2-minute timeout, Paul Crewe was doing everything he could to make something happen and find a man open downfield like he does right here, with Cheeseburger Eddie trucking his way inside the red zone and making an impact on this game. Paul Crewe capped off the drive with a touchdown to wide receiver Jet Moore, taking the lead 21-17. And right when you think things can't get any better, they make a guard fumble on the kickoff return, and Coach Nate Scarborough picks it up, giving the ball back to Mean Machine with excellent field position. And all it would take was a screen pass to Deacon Moss right here, where he would finagle his way into the end zone for a touchdown, giving these actual criminals a 2-possession lead over the guards who watched them. But as great as things were going now, things would change because something would happen at halftime. Paul Crewe was stopped by the warden in the locker room, and he let Paul know very clear as day.
I want you to lose.
And although Paul really didn't want to do it, eventually he agreed.
All right, I'll do it.
Paul came out for the second half kickoff feeling sick to his stomach. To say the least, he was definitely not feeling too great because of what he was about to do, because he went on the field and pretty much sabotaged this offensive drive, allowing the guards to get the ball back and go down the field scoring a touchdown, making it now a 1-possession game. But Paul Crewe was trying to live up to his name by wrecking the Mean Machine's chances of winning, throwing a pick that almost went all the way back to the crib if it wasn't for Earl Meggett saving the touchdown. And it wouldn't be long before the guards got in the end zone for a touchdown, taking all the momentum to their side as they take the lead. But with Paul feeling like he has officially sabotaged enough, he decided to take himself out and sit on the bench for the rest of the game, meaning that the next man up was actually about to be Brucey. So after this running back for the guards makes their way all the way down the field, getting their team across the goal line for a touchdown, it was officially time for Brucey to get in the game.
Yeah, it's Brucey's time to shine, baby. Okay, down, set!
And boy, let me tell you guys right now, Brucey did not have a great time, because he ended up getting sacked on consecutive plays. Especially down at the 1-yard line, he had nowhere to run. He got sacked in the end zone for a safety. And you could tell that he was definitely feeling some pain.
I got a bird. His name is Ronnie.
Well, tell Ronnie you got knocked the fuck out.
The guards had gone down the field and scored a touchdown to make it a 3-possession lead. And Paul Crewe had finally come to his senses and got himself off the bench, telling all of his teammates the truth about how the warden wanted him to throw this game. So after talking it out with his guys, Paul Crewe got right back to throwing another pick. And that flag still counted because it was holding on offense. So now with the guards about to get the ball back, looking to go up 4 scores, it was not looking good for the Mean Machine. At least up until Battle said, "Wang!" coming up with a big-time pick, bringing it all the way back to the crib and making it a 2-possession game. And now things are starting to look a little bit more interesting, especially after this defense comes out there on the following drive and comes up with another pick. And now we got Clint Summers, another linebacker, bringing his ball back the other way, as he gets himself in the end zone for a touchdown to now make this a 1-possession game. And everybody was loving it now because the Mean Machine were back in it. With 2 minutes left though on 3rd down and 9, the guards had an opportunity to put this game away. But Joey Battle comes up with a huge stop, forcing the guards to have to kick a field goal, but the entire crowd seems like they know who they want to win.
Mean Machine.
Mean Machine. Mean Machine. Mean Machine. Mean Machine. Mean Machine.
And now with all that inspiration in their ears, these offensive weapons were ready to move their way downfield. But little did they know that Deacon Moss had something up his sleeve. Because when Paul Crewe threw the ball up to him on this play, he uses his superpowered telekinesis to snag this ball. You see, what a lot of you guys don't realize is that Deacon Moss has an alter ego that loves doing that cocaine. And he just happened to do so much of it that he eventually developed superpowers, so that's all this was right here. But now inside the 10-yard line, this game has less than 10 seconds left. So Paul Crewe knows that he has to take a shot to the end zone, and he finds Earl Megan, scoring a touchdown with 4 seconds left. And just like that, Paul Crewe had led his team of criminals and convicts to a victory.
We win! Group hug in the shower tonight! Or not! Or not!
The Mean Machine would win this game 51-48. And although all of these guys thought that this would be their last game, after this performance, the prison warden decided that he was going to make a few calls, change a couple rules, and set some things up with the NCAA. Because now he wanted Paul Crewe to lead this group of convicts in a full schedule against Division I college level athletes. And the warden told each and every player on the roster that if they can go out there and win a national championship, then all of their sentences will be expedited for bringing football glory back to Texas. So after hearing that, every single player on this team became extra locked in. And now Paul Crewe and Coach Nate Scarborough were ready to go out there with their team full of criminals and win a game against their first real college team. They came out here in a game against FCS West and were getting scored on early. But once they realized that they were playing against one of the worst teams in the country, they had to lock in, because no way that they can be losing to that. So on the next drive, their quarterback drops back to pass, and Crazy Torres comes up with the pick. And he has a wide open lane all the way back to the crib for 6. And this was all the Mean Machine needed to start getting things going. So Paul Crewe comes out in the next drive and throws a touchdown pass to Deacon Moss. His second touchdown reception of the season, and definitely won't be the last. Probably because it would only be a quarter later where he would break free over the top, and Paul Crewe would deliver a dime, allowing Deacon Moss to streak his way into the end zone for another touchdown, where the Mean Machine would take control of this game and eventually put this one away, with the Mean Machine going on to win this game 53-31. These criminals had come together to deliver a great performance, but the player of the game was really Deacon Moss. Over 250 yards and 4 touchdowns is crazy, and it was definitely a confidence booster to win National Offensive Player of the Week, especially before having to hit the road and play against another in-state team, as the Mean Machine were now set to face off against Texas Tech. And early on, it was looking like the Mean Machine might have met their match, as Texas Tech breaks off a long run right up the gut, taking it all the way to the end zone for a touchdown for the 7-0 lead. But the Mean Machine offense would strike back almost immediately, getting the ball out to a wide receiver on the screen pass, and before you know it, he was streaking up the sideline for a long touchdown. Almost nobody in his vicinity the whole way downfield. But this game would remain close all the way to the fourth quarter, where Texas Tech was forced to kick a field goal. And now on offense, all the Mean Machine had to do was convert this third down to win the game. And Paul Crewe had launched this ball up to his wide receiver Deacon Moss, who came down with an incredible catch to not only get the first down, but to close the game out, as the Mean Machine ended up escaping this game with a 1-point victory. And it was mostly due to the amazing play of Paul wrecking Crewe. And it was probably because of all his success that was making a lot of the guards back at the prison act out. But while Paul was taking beatings in prison, his team was giving out beatings on the football field. Because even when the Mean Machine would fall behind in a game, they have guys like Big Turley to get him in the end zone for a touchdown to bring him back, and give them tons of momentum to keep going strong until the second half, where Paul Crewe would feel comfortable taking deep shots over the top to his guy Deacon Moss, who found himself wide open with a field of green grass, streaking his way towards the end zone for a touchdown and extending the lead for the Mean Machine. And after Earl Mega takes his carry outside and up for a touchdown later on, these points would effectively put an end to this game, as the Mean Machine were on a little bit of a winning streak, claiming this one 43-33. Paul went out there and had another great game, but he was not satisfied, because he knows that if he doesn't find a way to get this team ranked, then they have no chance of winning a national championship, meaning no chance of him or his teammates being freed. So he came out ready to go in a game against Tulsa, where Caretaker had set them up with some chrome jerseys, and you could tell Big Turley definitely liked him the way that he was playing, bruising his way across the goal line for a touchdown, giving the Mean Machine an early lead. But even on defense, the Mean Machine had plenty of players always ready to come out here and make a play, and set their offense up with great field position to score, but also set up opportunities for Paul Crewe and Deacon Moss to show that they are one of the best duos in the country, with Deacon Moss finding himself streaking downfield for another touchdown on his season on a score that gave his team the lead. But then it was time for Earl Meggett to shine, with him finding a wide open running lane and bursting through for a huge gain that goes all the way down the sideline and eventually into the end zone for a touchdown to effectively put this game away, with the Mean Machine finishing off Tulsa 45-28, and Deacon Moss having showed out with 150 plus yards and 2 touchdowns. You know, at this point in the season, Paul Crewe was one of the best passers in the country, and Deacon Moss was actually looking like the #1 receiver in the country. But they both know that they still have plenty of work to do this season if they want to accomplish their goal. And going into the next game against Florida Atlantic, they both felt extra prepared to execute. And so did Earl Meggett, as he got across for a goal line early on for a touchdown, taking the early lead, but they kept building on it. They came out on defense and got a pick, with this defensive back going the other way for an eventual touchdown, extending the lead for the Mean Machine and setting up more suffering for Florida Atlantic, as eventually Crazy Torres comes across the middle and says shablaka. And by the end of this game, the Mean Machine would go on to win 24-10. And this team was definitely on a roll. I'll tell you what, by the time week 11 rolled around, they were still 8-0 and were comfortably at the top of their conference standings despite being unranked. And also despite being unranked, they currently held a spot in the college football playoffs. And Nate Scarborough was getting a lot of credit as a coach for the position that they were in. But so were many of the other skill players that were key contributors all year. But this team was ready to keep things rolling like they had been all season, as they were heading into their next game against the Army. And this was a game where Big Tony had showed up big time, as he comes up with the sack early on in the game to give the Mean Machine a bunch of momentum. And it seemed to carry on all throughout the game, as Paul Crewe would roll out to his left and eventually find his way in the end zone for a score, giving the Mean Machine a 21-0 lead before half. But even when the Army started to make a comeback, Paul Crewe would lead his team right back downfield, and Earl Meggett would take care of business with another touchdown to put this game away, with the Mean Machine going on to close this game out 34-22. And with how well this team had been playing all season, it was no surprise that they would end up being ranked at some point. And now these convicts were more focused than ever on trying to get to the playoffs and earn an opportunity for them to gain their freedom. So they came hyped up into their next game against UTSA. And it's funny that Deacon Moss was a highlighted player before the game started, because this was a game where he would show the entire country that he was easily the best receiver. Man, that boy Deacon Moss ran a slant across the middle, and he found himself booty butt cheeks naked wide open for a touchdown. But this score was only really the beginning for Deacon Moss, because he would go out there again running an in-breaking route over the middle, get himself wide open before making the catch, going upfield and saying, "Hey!" Absolutely snapping this poor fella's ankles on his way to the end zone. I mean, I don't know if you guys saw that, but look at this right here. Absolutely frying his shit. But Deacon Moss wasn't done cooking these boys up, because he came out there on the next drive and got loose over the top, and Paul Crewe had delivered an absolute dime. The thing is, though, that Deacon Moss didn't really feel like scoring a touchdown. He felt like being generous today, so he went down inside the 5-yard line so that the Mean Machine could chew out the rest of the clock, and Big Turley could take it into the end zone for another touchdown in his season, effectively putting an end to this game, with the Mean Machine going on to win another one 34-31. A shout out to Deacon Moss for another incredible performance, earning himself another Offensive Player of the Week. So now going into the final 2 games of the regular season, the Mean Machine were just hoping to keep their momentum going and maintain their position in the playoffs. And then they would finally be ready for their next game against ECU, who actually came out looking like they're more ready to play against the Mean Machine, as they went in for a second touchdown to make it a 14-point game, threatening to take control and end the playoff hopes for these convicts. But the Mean Machine would start getting things going as Earl Meggett got into the end zone for a touchdown, bringing it to a 1-possession game and bringing his team back in it. They were eventually able to take a lead and score another touchdown with no time left on the clock, as they just wanted to assert their dominance for being down 14 early on in the game. But the Mean Machine go on to win another game 30-21. And the only thing standing in their way of not only a playoff berth, but a first-round bye is a matchup against the Temple Owls and then the conference championship game. So they stormed onto the field against their next opponent, hoping to come away with another victory. And for the first time all season, we got head coach Nate Scarborough getting into the end zone for a touchdown, leading the way to start this game before Earl Meggett follows suit, coming out later with a touchdown of his own to extend this lead to 2 possessions. But by the end of this game, it was starting to get out of hand, With Temple unable to come up with pretty much any stops, they were not going to be able to prevent this 42-17 shellacking that the Mean Machine put on them. And shout out to Deacon Moss for winning Player of the Game, but we actually get to see Big Tony win Player of the Week. And after a regular season where the Mean Machine pretty much steamrolled their competition, going a perfect 12-0 on their way into the conference championship game, it felt like a perfect opportunity for this team to keep their foot on the gas, with Deacon Moss coming up with a big play over the middle that led to a score. But this was a game where UAB was playing extremely well. They actually went out there and took a second half lead, but that Paul Crewe to Deacon Moss connection was growing stronger each week, and this day wasn't going to be any different, as Deacon comes down with a big time catch in the end zone, taking the lead right back. And this game would end up coming down to a last second Hail Mary by UAB, where the quarterback had chucked it up to the end zone and it actually got intercepted. So the Mean Machine would go on to win another game and secure their ticket to the playoffs, as they go on to finish this game 29-21. And now that they are conference champions, it is actually time for some awards to be given out, and Nate Scarborough wins Coach of the Year. No question that he did a great job all season helping Paul lead this group of convicts. But it's easy to lead guys like Deacon Moss, who turned out to win the Best Receiver Award in all of college football. And Earl Meggett was also in the running to win Best Running Back. But the important thing is that this team had earned their ticket to the second round of the playoffs. So now, after the crazy year that these convicts have had, it was time for them to step into their first playoff matchup against the Michigan Wolverines. And this was a game where the Mean Machine would find out very early on that they were playing against better competition, because Michigan comes out early playing great on defense and then goes out on offense and gets into the end zone for the lead. But the thing is, Paul Crewe did not come all this way to lose to some snot-nosed kids from Michigan. And neither did Deacon Moss, as he comes up with a huge catch downfield and brings him all the way into the end zone for a touchdown to tie this game up at 7. But oh, it would not stop there, as Deacon Moss would find a way to exploit this matchup, because even though this cornerback was pretty good himself, Deacon Moss was just way better. And all game, that Paul Crewe to Deacon Moss connection flourished, eventually leading to Earl Meggett going into the end zone for another touchdown on his season, and effectively putting an end to this game, as they go on to close this game out 35-23. And shout out to Paul Crewe for another incredible performance when needed most. But now that the Mean Machine had made their way to the semifinals, they were about to face off against their toughest opponent yet, as they were about to face off against the #1 team in the country, the Georgia Bulldogs. Paul Crewe came into this Cotton Bowl ready to lead his team like he had all season, but they started out this game by going for it on 4th down, and it turned out to be a bad decision, as Georgia would get the ball with great field position, and their quarterback would find his tight end wide open right over the middle with nobody around him, scoring a touchdown to take the early 7-0 lead. But out of nowhere, there seems to be a new hero emerging for this Mean Machine offense, because number 12 comes out here and makes the catch off a tip pass, and he is now streaking his way down the sideline with plenty of room to run, eventually being brought down at the 1-yard line, and it was all set up by whatever this is, but you know what, I'm sure they'll take it, because a play later, Earl Meggett takes this ball into the end zone for a touchdown, tying this game up at 7. But by halftime, Georgia was looking to go back up by 7 after nailing this field goal straight through the uprights. So at halftime, Georgia had the lead 24-17. But that would not last for long, as Deacon Moss would find himself wide open, and he was now streaking his way towards the end zone for another touchdown of his own, getting his team right back in it by tying it up at 24. And after the Mean Machine went out there and got a stop on 3rd down, they were able to come back out on offense and start driving back down the field. And with the help of many of their skill players, including number 12 right here, the Mean Machine were about to find their way back in the end zone for another touchdown to have the lead in the Cotton Bowl. But Georgia wasn't about to go away quietly, so they started moving their way right back down the field, and even got to this 4th down where Carson Beck comes up and makes the play, shrugging off Crazy Torres as he gets into the 5-yard line. And it would only be a play later where he threw a touchdown to tie this game up at 31. But now with a minute left, this Mean Machine offense had a chance to make something happen. And they had a decision to make here, but they realized that Georgia would probably go back down the field and score again, so they had to go for it on 4th down. And on 4th down and 9 with the game on the line, Paul Crewe got the ball out to his best weapon, and Deacon Moss comes up with the catch, making a big play to help get his team not only a 1st down, but bring him past midfield. And after a couple runs with Big Turley to chew this clock out, this game would come down to a last-second field goal kick to send the Mean Machine to the national championship, winning this game 34-31. And when Paul Crewe had thought about all that he had been through, from his time at Florida State to his big accident that landed him back in prison, to the warden wanting him to fix games just for him to go back out there and lead his team to a victory over the guards, ultimately leading his team right to where they are now, on their way to the national championship. and they knew that this was potentially going to be a really tough game. But this team had stuck together all season, and this game was going to be no different. The Mean Machine went out there and were ready to play like their freedom depended on it. The Mean Machine were finally in the national championship, and Earl Mega was getting this game started off well with a nice little return out to the 30. But now Paul Crewe was ready to lead this offense. He went out there and got things started early with this guy Deacon Moss, getting him the ball on actually a couple plays, including this screen pass, where Deacon would come up with his second first down already, helping to lead the Mean Machine all the way down the field, where on this play Paul Crewe rolls out right and finds a guy open in the back of the end zone for a touchdown, taking the 7-0 lead in the national championship. But they weren't about to take their foot off the gas there, because the defense comes out with a big-time sack on first down. And even though Missouri kept moving the chains and looked like they could get to the end zone, they didn't expect for somebody to say shablaka, forcing a fumble and giving the Mean Machine back the football. And the offense would come out there and take advantage by getting the ball out to Deacon on a screen, and he finagled his way into the end zone for another touchdown on his season, giving the Mean Machine a 14-point lead in this game. Unfortunately, even with this defense playing extremely well, Missouri would eventually find their way across the goal line and would actually go on to tie it up before the end of the first half, but a field goal kick by the Mean Machine would give them a 3-point lead. And when coming out after halftime, it looked like they were about to set themselves up with another chance to score a touchdown. But on this 4th down and 3, Paul Crewe just makes a big mistake. And all of a sudden, Missouri was taking this ball all the way back the other way for a touchdown, giving themselves the lead in the process. But for some reason on defense, they keep thinking that it's a good idea to press Deacon Moss. And on this play, he goes out there and makes them pay, coming up with a huge catch over the top, and he was on his way to the end zone to take the lead right back. And Paul Crewe was out there feeling like things were about to go the Mean Machine way. They went out there on defense and got a big-time stop on 3rd down, and then came up with a nice little trick play on this punt return, where Earl Mega was giving his team excellent field position. And Paul went out there and was finding guys left and right to extend the chains and chew the clock. And with the help of Earl Mega, the Mean Machine were able to get inside goal-to-goal territory and start forcing Missouri to take their timeouts. And this would ultimately result in a 1st and goal carry by Earl Mega, where he would power his way across the goal line for a touchdown, extending the lead to 2 possessions for the Mean Machine and giving them control in this game. But things would only seem to get worse for Missouri as Big Tony comes up with the sack, and Big Swatowski recovers the football in the end zone for a touchdown. And we got to make sure that they're not cheating or something, but no, they're just playing great. The Mean Machine were absolutely dominating the national championship in the second half. But it's too bad that Big Tony would actually end up getting hurt on this play.
Can of corn, and I'll be fine. Can of corn.
But after the kicker goes out there and makes this field goal, that would be enough to put this game away, and the Mean Machine had now won a national championship. Led by Paul Crewe, this team had come so far, and now all of these players were finally able to go back home. I mean, who would have known that a team full of grown-ass men could beat up on some teenagers? But either way, the Mean Machine were national champions. And as far as season stats, Paul Crewe had led the country in passing by a pretty wide margin. As far as the running game, Earl Mega had barely eclipsed 1,000 yards, but he had 27 rushing touchdowns. Now, Deacon Moss was by far the best receiver in the country, and he proved it every week. Plus, this defense led by Joey Battle, Swatowski, and Big Tony, not to mention Crazy Torres lurking in the backfield, it's no surprise that they were consistently able to come up with big-time stops. But we can't forget about guys like Cheeseburger Eddie who came up clutch all season. Even guys like Big Turley and Nate Scarborough. But something big happened after this season ended, because Roger Goodell, commissioner of the NFL, contacted the warden and let him know that each and every single player on this Mean Machine roster were going to be invited to the NFL, as they've proven that they're more than capable of playing on a big-time level and wants the Mean Machine to compete for a Super Bowl. So if you want to see Paul Crewe have his ban lifted from the NFL and lead the Mean Machine to a Super Bowl, be sure to subscribe to the channel down below and get this video to 1,000 likes. But also make sure to comment down below what else you guys want to see next, and check out some of these other stories until the next one comes out. If you got to this point in the video, just know that I appreciate you more than you'll ever know. I hope all of your college football and NFL teams make some nice moves this offseason. Happy New Year, and other than that, I'm going to catch you guys next time.